Was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. He says a UFO hovered over his nuclear missile site and disabled all the missiles.
And so, Carl, here's the million-dollar question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Roswell, New Mexico is a quiet city of just 26,000 people. The majority of the population are ranchers or military.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
My name is Dale. I want to welcome you to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. Really excited today because we have a great guest today, and it is Steve Bassett, UFO activist for about 28 years, I believe. And we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about yesterday's hearing and probably more, especially talk about where do we go from here. And so without any further ado, I want to go ahead and bring Steve onto the stage. It's good to have you, Steve.
Glad to be with you.
The cool thing was, we talked a little bit before we started the podcast, is Steve was there. I think you said you were at the fourth row. And so who were the other people that you saw there that you recognize that maybe X might recognize too, the community?
Oh, Lord. Everybody was there. The big stars, luminaries. And each time they'd walk down the hall, everybody surround them, get their selfies. People were photographing. Of course, in my group, Danny Sheehan was there and in the room. Jim Garrison was there in the room. Leslie Kane, saw her. James Fox. Boy,
were George and Jeremy there? I didn't see them. I'm assuming they were.
Jeremy, I'm pretty sure. I don't think, maybe George, maybe both, but I know Jeremy for sure. And then let's see who else. Lord, I mean, it's many podcasters. All right, many podcasters, without question. Many of them doing interviews. Bob Salas was there. He joined me. I got him in to that hearing. I'm working on getting Bob Salas actually in front of a committee under oath, along with some of the other nuclear shutdown witnesses, which really should have testified long before this, but I get it. But they're still trying to get that opportunity to testify under oath to probably the most significant events that have happened in the UFO era, UAP era. Let's see. I don't want to leave anybody out. But there were researchers, there were activists, there were podcasters, and a good number of them got in the room. But in order to get in that room, I got there at 5 a.m. And we had to stand outside for 2 hours. It was about 39, 38 degrees.
Wow.
One person was completely wrapped in a blanket, sleeping on the sidewalk. But you do what you got to do, right?
It reminds me of years ago, my best friend and I wanted to get good ZZ Top tickets. And so we got there like at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I think it opened at 6 or 7 or 8, whatever it was. And so we had to stay up the whole time. It was colder than anything, but you know what? We got our tickets. And that's
it's notable that people are now doing to get into a UAP hearing what they would have done to get into a major rock concert. So exactly. I think that says something.
Yeah, well, let me ask you some questions. What did you think about the hearing? That's the first one, the most important question. Did it accomplish what you were hoping it would accomplish?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. It gets tricky. The dynamic is this, that as an activist, I think it's easier for me to get this dynamic. Not everybody can do this. The purpose of these hearings and so much else that's going on is not about finally getting the truth out to the people and ending the lie. well, maybe it is about that, but I mean, it's not about actually getting the information to you directly. It's part of a process leading ultimately to disclosure. It's all about disclosure, right? And so everybody, probably everybody that's been on these panels, as well as the witnesses, they know there's an ET presence, all right? But what we're doing now is getting to where the president can say that, not Colonel Nell or Bob Bigelow or Gary Nolan or so many others, which is fine. I'm glad they're doing it, but it's the president that's got to say it. And while a president, any president, could walk out in front of the White House at any time and just say that, given it's the most profound event in human history, and then there's an unlimited number of people and institutions that are going to be impacted, it would be considered not just grandstanding, but grotesque irresponsibility. So that hasn't happened, and I don't want it to happen. So we got to get to where the president can disclose. Fine, that's where this is all been going. And in service to that, this hearing was fantastic. But for those that were expecting another blockbuster announcement, even surpassing Grush or something like that, or someone to sacrifice themselves on the altar of disclosure, no. But why it was so important is that the last hearing was essentially about Grush. I love Fravor and Graves, are great guys, but they didn't really have anything significant to say that wasn't well known. But they did offer some support to Grush. But it was Grush. He was the centerpiece, and he had a very specific piece of very important information, namely secondhand confirmation of non-human bodies, non-human tech, and some observations. It's very focused. I get that. And of course, it stirred a lot of energy, generated a lot of press. Love it. This hearing was much more powerful in a different way. What you had today was 4 witnesses with very extensive backgrounds covering a broad range of subject matter in this genre, including a journalist, an investigative journalist. First time we've had that. Okay. And so they presented their statements in advance and then answered the questions. And the information that was coming out covered a broad range of subject matter, but also reinforced each other. So each one was reinforcing the other. So this was like a powerful presentation to the general public who don't know much about this, saying this is important, this is legitimate, these are important people, as opposed to the single person saying, I got something spectacular to tell you. That's huge for me. It's not huge for the average person trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. So in that sense, it was very strong. You had 11 members on the panel this time. Unfortunately, only 3 were Dems, but 8 Republicans. The Dems are still slow to take this on at the level they should. It's a mistake. Nevertheless, that's 11 panelists. That's a lot. It went a solid 2 hours. There was a broad range of questions.
Hey, can we real quick identify the witnesses in case somebody's watching the podcast that maybe didn't see it and aren't sure exactly who the 4 witnesses were?
Someone who needs no introduction, Luis Elizondo.
Right.
All right. A very competent investigative journalist named Schellenberger. All right. Very important. A man named Mike Gold, who had a broad career covering a number of areas, including in the civilian sector as well as government. And you can, again, read their bios. They're available.
He's going to be the most controversial. He's going to be the most controversial of the 4 witnesses. Did you hear his comment? I imagine people are still laughing about it, but he made the comment that NASA was the most transparent company that he'd ever worked for. And a lot of people like to call NASA or have NASA stand for never a straight answer. So I'm sure people are still laughing on that one. He was promoting it, and I know that's what he was doing, but it just kind of hit funny, you know.
Put a pin in that. We'll get back to it. All right.
Okay.
And I want to finish with the last person, and that, of course, is Admiral Gallaudet. Also very strong. Navy. Okay. The Navy, you haven't had any Navy witnesses up there. Okay. Young guy, brilliant, also a scientist, been involved in a number of areas. Obviously could speak because of his background in the USOs. So he brought a lot of gravitas. And so there was a lot of gravitas massed on that panel. Another point I'll make that did not happen the first time around, but was very notable, because I do not believe C-SPAN aired this live last time, but they did this time. Maybe I'm wrong. If somebody feel free to correct me in a chat room or something, but C-SPAN broadcast it live, Script News broadcast it live. Of course, the committee website, YouTube broadcast it. And I think there may have been a couple of other live broadcasts, but also there were Twitter, I say Twitter, there were X members, people on Twitter, on X, right, who were broadcasting it live on their Twitter account.
Right.
And how they do that, I don't know, but they were doing it, right? And so, again, from my perspective, which is bringing the public up to speed and getting them on board with this process that many of us, of course, have been pursuing for many years, it was fantastic. And then the point I was going to make is this. Unlike last time, when these 4 witnesses came into the room to sit down at that table, they were getting applause from the entire audience. And that applause was being seen by everybody watching that hearing. And that may not seem like much, but it is much. It is a lot. It sends a very powerful message to the Congress and to the public. These are heroes. They got acknowledged as such. Let me tell you, that wasn't always the case. Now let's go to gold. Look, to repeat that I have said ad infinitum, what is going on? All of this. Call it kabuki theater, call it structured propaganda, whatever the hell. What is going on, and particularly the last 7 years, is not about the U.S. government realizing that they need to figure out what the hell's going on up there. No, not at all. Zero. Okay. So with that, what the hell is all this about? I mean, what's going on? What is going on is that by around 2017, actually before that, a significant portion of the military intelligence complex, there are people within that complex, which is vast with tens of thousands of people, but a significant sensibility was developing that the truth embargo was not going to last much longer. It's incredible that this lasted 77 years, but its days were numbered. It was going to end. And okay, then what? Right? Some of them didn't know when it would end, but they felt it needed to end. And so the consensus was shifting towards disclosure. All right. And so the To the Stars Academy was announced, and those 10 people were put up on the website, and I instantly knew pretty much what was going on. And I realized this is endgame. This chess game we've been playing with the government for 77 years is now entered endgame. There's not that many moves left. And the government's going to lose. There's no way they ultimately win. So what is it about then? It's not that complicated, but it's hard for some people to accept it. That the confirmation from the president of the United States, either because the president is the first head of state to do it, or the second or third or fourth, this confirmation, which will go worldwide in a few days, I mean, it'll be virtually worldwide, is the biggest event in human history. It's the most profound paradigm change of all time. And one of the reasons it is that is because it will affect more people, more institutions, more governments, more apple carts in the shortest amount of time than anything has ever happened. And when something like that's going to go on, it's not like, what the hell, let's just throw it out there. I mean, there is a responsible way to end the truth embargo, no matter how irresponsible the embargo was. Okay, there's a responsible way to do everything at the high level. And by the way, I think our government has been poor in that regard. We've done a lot of things in very irresponsible ways, but this is not one we can do that way. And I say that as somebody that's 28 years in and would have loved to have had disclosure in 1999, right? So what is going on is that before the president, our president, can step out in the East Wing and say, look, this is true. There's an ET presence here. We need to be prepared for that. We need to be set up for that. We need to set the stage for that so that the day after disclosure, which is the name of a book that I want to write, but all I've done so far is I came up with a great cover and a back cover, but I can't write the book. What the hell? Anyway, the point is that we have to have a lot of stuff in place. We have to be prepared. We need an arrow, right? We need legislation. We need an informed Congress. We need NASA to be on board, et cetera, et cetera. We need all of this stuff. All right. And that's what they've been doing, putting it all together. And which is fine. It's great. So far, so good. Right. And the analogy I like to use, and it's appropriate right now, is that a very big event every 4 years is the inauguration of the president. And yeah, you could just do it at a Denny's, 10 Denny's, around 11, the Supreme Court justice come in, put the hand, the Bible is sitting on the table. There's a plate of eggs off to the side. It takes the oath and bing. No, that would be very irresponsible now, wouldn't it? And so what you do is you spend a lot of time putting up this massive scaffolding, all right, in front of the Capitol, just huge. You got seats, you got all this stuff. It takes weeks to do it. And then hundreds, if not thousands of people come and they watch this event. And it's formal, it's appropriate, it's right. And then they take all the scaffolding down and we can move on. It's like that. Everything you've been seeing is the scaffolding being put together for a massive event that's going to take place. And like the inauguration of a president, it's only going to take an hour or two. That's it. All right. Okay. So far, so good, right? That's what they're doing. Now,
can I ask you a question though? Because a lot of people are making comments about it and speculating about it. Some people feel like the government is using individuals like Lou to slow drip disclosure. And yet the thing that I notice is whenever we have a setback, they're the same people that get up there and say that disclosure is dead. And so, they made the comment that Lou's book is simply him being told what to say. And I've had to try to clear that up. No, they're telling him what he can't say. And that's not the same thing as telling him what he can say. But even George and Jeremy have been accused of getting information from the government as a slow drip, a slow disclosure. And I don't know. I'm just was wondering what your opinion on that is, especially since we're talking about it.
Look, everybody in this field gets criticized in one way or another, and the more you're doing, the more you get criticized. That just comes with the territory. Our job is not to staunch the criticism. Our job is to get the damn thing done.
All right.
Win the chess game, get disclosure, right? There's only several billion people watching this, right? And increasingly, they're all
is it a slow drip, or are we just taking it step by step? Which one is that? Is the government helping us get there, or are we taking it on our own step by step?
The government is helping us get there, but there are parts of the government that are pushing back, right? So is anybody shocked at that? And when you've got something like this that's been in play for 77 years, there are plenty of people that are impatient. So no matter what we do, it's slow drip. My job is not to make them feel better or to convert them from slow dripper to fast drippers. My job is to get the job done. Don't worry. So you don't want to go there too much. Let people express their opinions. You don't have to resolve everybody's opinions. Let them have their opinion. They'll slowly move forward and it'll happen. So what I was getting to there before was that so this is the conundrum. This is what makes this so frustrating. Now, I appreciate the government's dilemma. I'm a nice guy. I'm easygoing, right? And so, as a responsible member of Congress, as a responsible person in the national defense structure and everything else, that this thing needs to be done in a responsible way. But you got a problem. It may not be your fault. Is the government has been denying that there's anything there at all for 70 some years. And so what do? You got to get legislation. You've got to raise money. You got to do all of this stuff, which obviously you need cooperation and support. But you can't hold a press conference and say, we're going to pass legislation to set up a UAT task force or ARROW, whatever else, because by God, there's extraterrestrials everywhere. Right. And it's time we got to get this stuff together to deal with it. And people will say, what? What do you mean there's extraterrestrials everywhere? You told us there aren't any. And well, you can't do that. They have put themselves, they box themselves in. It's their own fault, but they have no choice. And so they have to do all of this stuff without acknowledging the reason they're doing it. It's really a little awkward. It's frustrating. The more you know about the subject, the more understanding that you are. But for a lot of people, they're going, this doesn't make any sense at all, right? How many people have to come out in public and say there's ETs here, and you're going, well, look, we need to pass this, and we need to do that, and everything else. Are there ETs here? Well, I don't really know. It is nuts, which is why it needed to be done quickly. So when the major move was made by the what I call the Magnificent 10, they came out with their name and bio on that website, To the Stars Academy website, 2017. I think, well, first of all, I believe that and they've never contradicted me. I've only said it about 1,000 times. I believe the plan was to come out shortly after Clinton was elected during the transition time. It's about 70 some days. And boom. She had been engaging the issue. There had been 400 articles written about the ET issue and the connection to her. I'm going to take responsibility for about 80% of those. Thank you very much. She had to go on television. Her husband, Barack Obama. It was all great. All of this starts with the Rockefeller Initiative, but we're teeing her up, right? It's doing great. The media's covered it. She's not getting any negatives on it. The Republican Party didn't attack her. She was going to be the disclosure president, and they knew it. And hey, so if you want to get on board, if you want to help this along to make sure she's the disclosure president, then launch the To the Stars Academy. I don't know, late November, early December. The press is now really going nuts. They're asking her people questions, and they're all going, look, can't talk about that now. We wait till we get in the White House. We got to get her transition. She walks into the White House. The press is all ready to go. Probably had disclosure in the first 30 days. And I think they knew it. It would have been fantastic. And the To the Stars Academy would have been selling books and doing projects, and there would have been money coming in to compensate for the fact that the moment those 10 showed up on their website, their post-retirement prospects diminished greatly. The odd post-retirement contract here and there and whatever. No. And so they were taking a great risk, and that would have benefited. Okay, great. No problem. It was teed up perfectly. And it would have been fast. But that's not what happened. History is a bitch. She lost. And all of this blew up. What are you going to do? I'm in the UK. Want to know what the hell's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. I'm over there. But I'm enjoying myself. I love London. It's fantastic. I was staying in a nice place just about a block or half a block from the metro. The tube, rather. Go to the tube. Go anywhere I wanted. It's fantastic. And so what happened was they made the courageous decision, well, this didn't work out the way we wanted, but we got to go. And so they launched in October of 2017. All right. Okay. So as a result of a lot of other things, because when you're playing a game of chess, which is what we've been doing with the military intelligence complex for all these years, there's the game, which is hard enough. But say you have to play it with an earthquake. There's an earthquake going on, and you're trying to play chess. The board is bumping up and down. The pieces are falling off. It makes it a lot harder to play. And so really, the situation post-election in 2017, it was like the beginning of a political hurricane, Category 5. And then the pandemic came, disrupting countries and nations worldwide. Absolute chaos. And then a brand new war in Europe that really scary war in Europe came, more political chaos, and yet the game continued. And so it wasn't going to be quick. In fact, it's now in its 7th year, which makes it harder. In other words, not only do we have to set all this up to get disclosure, but it's going to take 7 years to do it. And as those years pass, people are getting more and more irritated. Get it done. What's the problem? Okay, so one of the components, again, I actually have a point to all of this. One of the components is NASA. In other words, the many, many institutions, DOD, Air Force, though they try to stay back, the Navy, whatever, CIA, all of these entities, Congress, need to get kind of on the same page as we move forward to disclosure. But one entity that was also important was NASA. So let's quickly address that. How long has NASA known about the ET presence? Since the day it was created, day one. That's why in the Space Act of 1958, when NASA was created, there is a very clear clause in the very first section, first 3 or 4 sections, first page, that anything that NASA does, encounters, wants to do with national security implications will be deferred to the Department of Defense. So if NASA found an entire civilization of ETs on the other side of the moon, they could do absolutely nothing except tell the Department of Defense, we just found another civilization on the other side of the moon, and stop. So NASA, and it's pretty frustrating, while people within it, certain people, not everyone, was fully aware that the ETs and ET presence, they have anti-gravitic drive, they're traveling all over the planet, have got to build a space program built on giant rockets to pursue space because that's their job. They couldn't go to the Congress and say, look, we don't need to build the rockets. Just wait until we get the ET disclosure out, and then we can use the anti-gravitic drive the government's been working on. They can't do that. So they built a space program. So in a sense, it was a rather profound contradiction. But it was our space. It was our Space Force, a space organization. It did a lot of good. It brought a lot of inspiration. It took us to the moon. But it was always a major point of cognitive dissonance with regard to this issue. And so NASA had to be brought into this, right? And the way they did it was, as things move forward, the legislation and everything else, NASA announced, well, first of all, I think it wasn't an accident that they managed to get Bill Nelson as the administrator. His background is perfect, right, to be the head of NASA in a disclosure situation. But NASA had to start a UFO study up to show that it's obviously interested and concerned about this too, want to study it. That's great. Is it irritating that there are people in NASA that know there's ET? So why are they starting up a UFO study now? Is there any chance that UFO study is going to announce after 6 months, oh yeah, there's ETs here? No, but it at least gets them on board. And that's good. It's important to have things in order. Now, after disclosure comes, I get it. All the questions there's going to be a torrent of questions. And there's going to be a question to Bill Nelson. Why were you so late in doing a study? When did NASA know about this? And if they're wise, and that goes for everyone answering questions, they tell the truth and nothing but the truth. And the answer will be, we've always known, or there's been people at high level in NASA have always known. And they're going to go to the government. They're going to go, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And the answers are all national security, national security. But because of all this effort to get things set up and do it responsibly, because of setting up like the appropriate study at NASA and whatever else is going on, the people are going to sort of get it. And they're going to say, okay, you did the right thing. Finally, you got things set up. It was kind of a ruse, but we get it. And so the impact of these huge public relations problems post-disclosure will be minimized. People will be more willing to forgive, and we can move forward into the post-disclosure world. So and whatever Mike Gold was saying was along the lines of, NASA's part of this, let's respect that. There's nothing to be gained by trashing NASA because it hasn't done what we want it to do. It took us to the moon. It is explored space. It's built space stations. I mean, give it a break.
Well, let's ask this question real quick about what Mike said. Give you a break for a second. He mentioned about, he's not wanting to spend a bunch of money because they got this Artemis thing going on and trying to beat China to the moon. But he mentioned that they wouldn't have to spend much money to be able to use AI to get NASA's archived data. And my question for you, Steve, is do you think the sensitive photos are actually in the archive, or do you think they've been removed?
There's a reason that they brought that up. Again, once you view this through my eyes, it's so easy to get it, right? I mean, I feel bad for those that haven't spent the last 28 years having to focus to the extent of everything else. NASA has got an unbelievable archive. There's probably a lot of incredible photos in there, but since there's several 100 million of them or something, nobody can find them, right? It's like there might even be some online, but you got to go through like 2 million photos to find it. But without NASA has got some extraordinary stuff, and obviously we want to see that, but obviously NASA is not going to let us see it until we get disclosure. And so what they were kind of pointing to and making it key that it's going to be really important that we come through a process where we can start getting all those archives out. Why? Because we know there's an ET presence, and NASA knows there's an ET presence, and there's a lot of great stuff in that archive. And obviously that's a resource, and NASA will provide that, and we'll take credit. Like, look at this wonderful stuff we got, right? We took those photos, and we'll say, well, then why didn't you tell us about it 20 years ago? And they're going to say, well, Department of Defense, National Space Act, whatever. And we're going to say, okay, right? And that's what we should do. I don't want, people don't want to get into recriminations, the lawsuits, yelling, screaming, jumping up and down. We're in the post-disclosure world, folks. You've lived long enough to be part of the most profound event in human history. That's a lot. Go with it.
Did you happen to hear Ross Coulthart talk about a trip he made to NASA? And while he was there, he actually saw several donut-looking objects. I think it was from the space station. And he said, whoa, are those Starlink satellites? And once he said that, they said, no, it's not. And they changed it. They switched that out and stuff. So that's why a lot of people are frustrated with NASA, because of stories like that.
Again, don't be frustrated. Don't be frustrated. You're frustrated because why didn't NASA unilaterally come out and end our misery? Come on, folks. It's a multi-billion-dollar entity with thousands of people and all kinds of responsibilities. And its job is not to disclose the ET presidents. That is the president's job, not NASA's job. And so again, the more people are willing to respect the situation that all of the various elements, whether they're members of Congress or NASA or the Air Force or whatever, and have some appreciation for it, the easier it is for them to get this done. Right? Constantly spitting on them from the front row seats. And that's not going to help. Now, I know a lot of people are going, yeah, Steve, but some of us have been through a lot harder time than you, and that's very true. Okay, contactees that have been really traumatized by their experience with ETs. They're looking at me going, yeah, dude, how many times have they probed you, buddy? And I get it. All right. Again, I'm trying to be balanced here, but we are winning this chess game. We are approaching checkmate. And so I think to the extent that we stay focused on the win and less upon what our opponent, the national security state, has done in the past. All the moves in the past don't really matter. What matters is the last move, the checkmate move. And that's, of course, where we're focusing now.
Just got to keep our eyes on the prize and not all the peripheral stuff that's going around that's irritating, but it doesn't help us to get to where we need to be. Question that I had, and Dia Dragon also had a similar question, is what's next? And Dia's question was, where will we be in a year from now? And so those two kind of combine those two questions together. What's next and where will we be in a year from now? What do you anticipate? And I want to say this to your credit. You were the one who mentioned that they would reintroduce the Disclosure Act to the 2025 NDAA, and so I give you an applause for that one and credit for it, because, even though they've had to fight to be able to reintroduce it, and I want to get to that in a minute about, this hearing, but so what are your thoughts on that, about what's next and where do you anticipate we'll be in a year without being a prophet?
It's like you're out in the ocean, right? And it's a force 5 hurricane, right? And the ship is, right, and lightning striking. And you say, well, where do you think the ship's going to be in about a year? Well, bottom of the ocean? I don't know. Let's just talk about the next couple of months, okay? Right now, what my assessment can be broken down to a couple of things. Either the Democrats, who have enough time, they have the witnesses, can end this during the transition. Okay? There's plenty of time between now and the new Congress, which could still happen after the new Congress. But let's just talk about between now and January 3. I said the Democrats. That is mistaken. I did not. Let me take that back. That's not what I wanted to say. The Congress can end this, okay, during the transition. And of course, that the focal point there is the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has been the biggest, most powerful engine here. The House has jumped in doing fantastic stuff. Don't get me wrong. Love it. And they've done good work. And obviously that was their hearing yesterday. But the final end moves will need to come from a committee commensurate with the importance.
Did you hear that Matt Laszlo talked to Senator Gillibrand, and she has confirmed that there is going to be a hearing in the Senate in December? Could that possibly be what could lead to it, or is that just another step?
Well, yeah, but she's done what she called hearings in the past, but they're not. They're just briefings, and you bring somebody up and talks to them. But let's just say this. She's picked a date, 19 December. Hasn't said who's going to be there. And she's not the chairman, but that doesn't matter. The chairman ultimately decides if there's going to be a hearing, but that doesn't mean they don't assign it to somebody and say, oh, lead this. And at this point, it looks like she's been assigned the lead. Now, if the Senate Intel, under the aegis of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, brings in 12, 14, 16 witnesses, not all on the 19th, but starting on the 19th and going over about 5 more days. And if particularly 4 of these witnesses are nuclear weapon shutdown witnesses, that's one of the reasons I brought Bob Salas was there. I got him into the event, and we did more than that. And I can only say that the prospects for Bob Salas and some of the other nuclear event witnesses actually testifying has gotten a lot better. And there could be no better place than would be a Senate hearing led by Kirsten Gillibrand. If they were to bring those kind of witnesses, I've heard numbers as high as 40 that are considered substantive. So you've got 20 witnesses, say, 5 days. Could go Wednesday to Tuesday or Monday to Friday, doesn't matter. Okay. 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And those 20 witnesses contain like 6 David Grushes. That week would blow the truth embargo up completely. It would be toast. Okay. Everybody would get it. Everybody would know. And then in an orderly, appropriate, non-political way, nonpartisan way, the president, who would be, as it happens, Biden at the time, could come forward and state, not because I just woke up with a bug in my butt, not just because I feel really empowered, not because I want the glory, but because the evidence and the testimony is compelling. And I have made queries, and I can confirm as your president that we do have a non-human presence in our world, and we know a lot about it, but we want to know a lot more. And so you can count on full engagement on that issue. Thank you very much, and walk down Cross Hall so he doesn't have to answer any questions. That can still happen. It could start with that hearing. I would love to talk to the senator, but I'm getting a lot of emails to come up on the Hill for some reason. I don't know. Either they think I'm either too crazy or a little weird. But the point is that's an example. That is one of the options. Now, why is this a good choice? I have a very good record of being nonpartisan on this issue, going back 28 years.
Okay? You have to be.
Given 2,000 interviews, easy. I don't think a single truly partisan statement I have made. Doesn't mean I might have said something a little funny, but overall, no. And I'm still absolutely nonpartisan. This issue transcends politics, religion, business. It transcends, Netflix series, whatever. Transcends it all. Okay, so if that were to happen, what that means is that before the new president takes office, we will have already been in the post-disclosure world for a number of weeks. Huge amounts going to be happening. Other heads of state are coming forward. It's a big deal. It's incredibly intense. And then when the new president takes office, facing a huge set of massive problems, all right, that is out of the way, right? All of that stuff is dying down now. And then that new president Trump and his administration will then start immediately to address the issues of the post-disclosure world. And that president will be the first president to actually engage the post-disclosure world. That is the way to do this. That is the responsible way. If they don't do this, then this issue carries forward into the new administration. It's still up in the air, floating around. There's all this stuff going on. It's getting wrapped into all the political things happening, and it's a fiasco, right? And I don't know what will happen after that. Another nation may say, we've had enough of this, and prime minister, president, emperor, whoever the hell is going to go out in front of a whole lot of media and confirm the extraterrestrial presence, and our next president is going to have to follow suit. Second, third, fourth, fifth, which is not a great look for the United States. And so there's no winners here, really, other than Joe Biden has a little gift on the way out of office. He's never going to run again. He's not a political figure after this, really. Not even as a retired political figure. I think he's probably going to just totally chill. I get it. All right. That is the way to do this, and that can still happen. Now, the other way is this. We don't get disclosure. We maybe get a few things that are interesting. We might get another hearing in front of maybe this.
Can I check you on that real quick? Hold that thought. Because I wanted to back up on your witnesses, because all Gillibrand has promised so far is looking into the Langley incursions and to bring Arrow up. I'm gathering you wouldn't telegraph if you were bringing the whistleblowers in, because we did that before and it didn't work out so well for us.
I have a feeling that that's probably her intent. Okay, I'm not suggesting that this is in play. What needs to happen is in play. I am suggesting that is obviously we need a hearing. She wants to have a hearing. I'm saying don't have a half a day with whoever the hell you're talking about. Let's have 1 week and let's get those 20 witnesses in here. Pick the best 20 out of the 40, if not more. I got 4 right now that I know I can get into Washington, right? That are major. SAC base officers present when our missiles were shut down. 30 missiles in the space of 2 days, and that was just on 2 occasions. It's happened many times, including the Soviet Union. You don't think that's major testimony, right? SAC base officers. You know, we've seen the people that have testified. God bless them. I think David Grush is a hero. Elizondo, all of them are wonderful. They're great people. They have good resumes. Yet they still get attacked. SAC base officers. Who are they? These are men, they were all men, who were cleared to be able to go down in a silo. 2. And had the full authorization. If the right code came through from the president, they could turn 2 keys and launch 18 ICBMs and wipe out several million people. Do you think they just picked them at random? Or do you think they just took volunteers? They put the most rock solid people they could find down in those silos. And it's those people that have been trying for 34 years to let us know that ETs have turned our nuclear weapons off. And the DOD, knowing how powerful that is just said, I don't know who these are. I mean, they could have killed them. They could have tried to destroy them, but that would have been a big mistake. And so they just try to say, SAC base officers? Who knows, right?
Just ignore it.
The media is saying that the DOD wouldn't deal with them is going, well, I guess we shouldn't deal with them. And 34 years, they have been trying, 30 years, since 1994. They've written 6 books. They've done a major documentary. They've done press conferences. They've spoke at conferences. And yet the Congress is going, who knows? I had no idea. Okay, I get it. Imagine 4 of them under oath with 10, 15, 20 million people watching a hearing where they confirm under oath. They've got affidavits. They've got documents that our missiles were shut down by non-human craft. You don't think that's going to have a big impact? Of course. And so Gillibrand could do it, but let's say she chooses not to, and we continue on into the next administration. All right. What's the situation there? Well, interestingly enough, I'm optimistic. Okay. Why? Well, there's a number of reasons. It's kind of complex, but one, the new president and the people around him obviously they're not unaware of all that's been going on. They've seen this. They realize there's something cooking here. they are aware the ET UFO issue is definitely in play. And there's no question there are people in the current that are going to be in the administration that have known about the ET presence. Okay, fine. The president-elect has been asked about this from time to time, right? And in that regard, though his responses have never been extensive at all, he's probably responded to a question about this that any other president ever, including Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton got more questions, but she wasn't the president. Okay. Certainly Barack Obama. Okay. And so he hasn't ruled it out. I am aware from following the usual media that the issue is being raised around him. There are people in his world that are sort of pointing at that and going, that would be a bad idea. And that's been picked up by the UK press. I've already logged in on my media archive about, I don't know, 12 stories in the UK papers, which are read all over I say read all over the world. The UK papers, you may think they're all silly tabloids. They're not. They're all good papers. We have stupid tabloids. They have news tabloids. And their websites for those like the Mirror and the Daily and the Express and the Mirror and the Daily Star and all of that have billions of views around the world, in the English language world. They've been writing these stories. That's soon to cross over you're going to start seeing stories in the UK about President Trump ending the embargo, telling the truth.
Can I add to that real quick? You mentioned that he's talked about it. There's at least 2 times where he has said on Joe Rogan, he said he would open up the JFK files and also the UFO or UAP files as well. And then I guess on Lex Friedman, he said the same thing. And so, I sent him an X message, and I, basically challenged him to do what he said he was going to do, to follow through with that campaign promise.
You're right. So he's done that. Again, he's an unusual man. He says a lot of things that don't happen. Okay, so we go, okay, fine. But when he said it on Joe Rogan, whether he wanted this to happen or not, he put it in play, because Joe Rogan's podcast is now, that show has been seen, I think when you count all the platforms, it's probably up in the 80 million range. So it's in play. And so from my point of view, there is a very realistic possibility that the president-elect is going to do this. And he's not going to wait 2 years or 1 year or 6 months. If he's going to do it, he'll probably do it within the first 60 days or less. Now, when I say do it, what do I mean? Well, again, and it wouldn't be out of character. He could be unilateral. He could basically say, call a press conference in the East Room, walk out there and say, I am the president of the United States, and I'm telling you there's an ET presence here. It's real. Okay. And I'm going to deal with it and whatever. And that's it. That's disclosure. Okay. Without the hearing and some other things that could be done. In other words, just cut the Gordian knot. He could be Alexander cutting the Gordian knot with a sword of disclosure, and it's done. Guess what? I'm down with that. It's fine. Okay. There'll be a lot of people that won't be down with that, but I'm fine with that. And on the other hand, what we would have is, and there's some reasons for this, quickly we'll have some more hearings, but these hearings will all be chaired. I say chaired. All of them now will be chaired by, in the Senate particularly. In other words, we need Senate hearings, obviously, and those will be chaired by a Republican. So a few Senate Intel Committee hearings chaired by Republicans kind of spreads the legacy, kind of spreads out the issue a little bit. Everybody gets to participate, and then the president confirms it. I'm fine with that too. So these are the two. You want to go a year ahead? Let's just go 4 months ahead. These are the two ways this can go. Could it go somewhere else? Yes, but it won't be because of, I think, political actions in the U.S. It'll be because somebody's going to use a tactical nuke in Ukraine. That'll put things off. Okay. A small nuclear weapon, terrorist weapon, going off in Palestine any part of Palestine, that's going to freeze it. An aggression toward Taiwan by China will freeze it.
All right.
Let's see. How many other massive hotspots are there? Those are the three big ones, frankly, that are looming here. But there are a number of, well, any terrorist nuke anywhere. The nuke issue, as I've said 80 million times, is absolutely married to this whole thing. So if that happens, I don't know what's going to happen, but it won't be good. Oh, and another pandemic. Yeah, let's throw that in, right? Another variant of that baby turns up, starts killing people at 50%, affected, and the disclosure is on the back table. So we need to get it done. We have 2 shots at it. One leading to the inauguration and one in the months after. And all I can say is I feel pretty good that we got a very good chance of having this wrapped up by, I don't know, end of March.
Okay. My next question for you is, did you have an aha moment maybe during the hearing, something that, you just really stuck out and you, boy, you know what, either weren't ready for it, weren't expecting it, or it was exactly what you wanted, heard or stated?
I read their statements ahead of time, which were published ahead. I read those.
Oh, wow.
And they read them. I'll tell you, one of the problems was the mic situation was awful in that room. Nobody was speaking into the mics as strongly as they should have. They had them too far away. It really was tough. If you watch, and I'm going to watch it again. I understand the people who were watching it live because of the way they set that up. It was great, but for us in the room, it was awful. But I'll be honest with you. Well, let me tell you what. Here's an aha moment. Okay, and I know what you're talking about. There was an aha moment in the first hearing. All right, and let's review it. It was a beaut. All right, and so we're going along, and Grush is doing his thing, right? And Nancy Mace, pretty sharp person. I am becoming increasingly impressed with Nancy Mace.
Yeah.
She takes advantage of the previous testimony and says to Grush, you've said that we have these multiple crash vehicles. Can you tell us where they're located? And I'm going, well, that's interesting. And he's going to definitely say, that's not something I can discuss in open session. And I think he slipped up and said, yes. He said, yes. Okay. That's firsthand. He's saying, I know where they're located, not I know somebody that knows where they're located. And I said, oops. And so she says, well, tell us. And then he says, I can't, I can only discuss that in a skiff, which is one of the reasons they immediately pressed to get a skiff after that hearing. They wanted to get him in there and get the locations. And the DOD said, no skiff for you. And when they finally got the skiff later on, they didn't get much of anything. That was an aha moment. We did not have a moment like that yesterday.
Okay. Well, I thought that was the parts that I really enjoyed was when Lou made, some of them were dancing around, whether it's ET or whether it's us or whether it's some, especially Gold, about some natural phenomenon. And Schellenberger wouldn't commit to it either. He just says, I don't know. But I appreciated that Gallaudet and Lou both, categorically said they believed it was, NHI and I don't know if you'd call it alien tech if they would go that far, because they wouldn't want to put it in a box. That's why they used the word NHI on that as well. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, I know this may be irrelevant, but to me it felt kind of important, is just as we listen to Nancy Mace, Representative Mace, talking about the fact that there was a lot of pressure for them not to have this hearing. She stated it, and then Moskowitz came in behind her and said not only did they not want this meeting to happen, they were also told not to ask certain witnesses certain questions. And then Representative Boebert said that she was told that their names were on a list because of having this. And so, I mean, That doesn't sound like slow drip to me. That sounds like we're at an all-out war within our government, those that want it and those that don't. And those that don't want it are fighting to try to even, where we can't even have these hearings.
Okay, look, I hear you. Look, let's try to keep our language appropriate. We're not having an all-out war, all right? But and as this chess game continues, every time we make a good move, the other side gets a little twitchy. I get it, all right? And so what happened here? By the way, I have a name. A name I'm using. I may use occasionally going forward for a member of the committee. I may be referring to her as Congresswoman Nancy Hell or High Water Mace. Mm-hmm. I love this. Okay, what happened here was this: Immaculate Constellation caught him by surprise. Grush, not so much. Grush was known. They knew what was going on there. They knew, and they understood he was going to the IG and everything else. I don't think they thought he would go to Ross Coulthard and Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean. That might have been a shock, but they knew about that. I don't think they saw this coming, and because first of all, it is a secondhand piece of information. It's not from the original source, sort of like Grush. But Grush is working on the program. This guy is, I don't know who the hell this person is. He's just somebody, right, in government who somehow got access to the documents confirming this program. And so he's got the docs. He determines, in his view, they're illegitimate. And then he goes to Schellenberger, right? And Schellenberger, who is a serious investigative journalist. He's not a hack, I assure you. He does his due diligence and decides it's legit. Ultimately ends up with Coulthard in terms of TV journalism. And at that point, it's clear that if Schellenberger and Coulthard think this is legit, it's legit. And so what we've had here is, I don't know if it's happened before, but I think there have been a number of these tossed into play, but they didn't have the kind, they weren't quite as strongly in play. And it was kind of that, yeah, maybe not. But in this case, it sounded and seemed as if possibly for the first time, a true USAP had just been exposed by name. And USAP, by the way, you came up in that hearing. I think it was for the first time. I don't think you turned up in that first hearing, but it turned up in this one. Yeah. And that means unacknowledged special access program. That is that's as tight as it gets, right? Unacknowledged special access program. And the only way it gets tighter if it happens to be underneath the Atomic Energy Act, which makes it even more secure, or sitting over with a defense contractor. But and so I think a lot of people over the DOD immediately looked up and said, what? That's not good. And so, and again, remember, they're losing the chess game. And I think they should just turn their king over and give up. But no, they're going to keep making some move, desperation. So they say, we got to do something about this. And so the word sort of got out that they didn't want this hearing, and they didn't want Schellenberger's testimony. They didn't want testimony about the hearing about that. And preferably, they didn't want the hearing at all. And so that eventually got to Mace, and it got to Burchett and Luna. And I'm not surprised that they basically said, tough. These people are not the kinds of Congress people that bend easily. And by God, they said, forget it, which I'm sure irritated the hell out of the Congress. I mean, of the DOD, rather. And so I think what they came back with was, just don't mention the name, right? Don't mention the name. And I think somewhere in there, somebody may have sort of intimated that, there could be consequences. And they jumped on that. So this, I'm on a list, really means somebody's kind of said something like that, screw you. And that was, I wouldn't say that was an aha moment, but it was interesting. Okay. But it also reflects something else. I think these members of Congress are probably of a mind that the DoD is losing and these threats are hollow. And so what the hell, right? So it may very well reflect that because the DoD is losing here, or at least those in the DoD that oppose the truth embargo ending. I get it. And they're doing what they can do. And so they went ahead, and this program is now in play even further. So the question is, well, eventually the question is, if I'm the Senate and I want to wrap this up, I want that gentleman in front of me by name, but with protection, of course, with the usual witness protections and so forth.
I think that right there, Steve, is what most people are wanting. You know, Robert Salas, awesome witness, whistleblower, or whatever. But I think what a lot of people want are people that are working in the programs and get somebody to come out and be brave enough to come out as a firsthand witness in one of these meetings. Is that going to happen? Because you just said it. This would be somebody, you know, that I guess I don't know. He's in the program, whoever this is, but he obviously came across this material, and he wrote about it. Because I was looking at it, skimming it earlier. That this is his summary of what he came across. This isn't an official Pentagon or State Department document. This is his summary. But what are the
Why do you think that was? Why do you think that was?
Because he didn't want it tracked back to him, I guess.
Well, no,
or because
actually handing out the actual document is pushing the envelope here. Okay,
right, criminal, right.
Classified document, right? It's like walking out the door, right? So you make a summary of it and you give that out. Now that's still a problem. In other words, if the DoD wanted to, I suppose they could hunt this guy down and send him to jail. I don't think that's going to happen. And let me make another point. You talk about the best witnesses.
Right.
I would suggest that if I am a person working in the program and I'm being called up because I have made some statements and I want to help, and I'm going to be sitting down at a table with millions and millions of people watching, and I'm going to have to take an oath about what I'm about to say about a program I'm in now, I would very much like to be sitting next to a SAC base officer who's not working in a program now, but is testifying that these ETs have shut our missiles down. That makes it a little easier for me to sit there. All right. I'm in very good company. Am I not? So let's keep all the witnesses on the same level. They're all powerful. The trick is to get the most powerful collection, and they've got it. Gillibrand's got it. Schumer's got it. Warner's got it. They know who they are.
Is Dan Farrar working on
what?
Isn't Dan Farrar working on a project similar to that? I think one of the representative mentioned that he's putting together some kind of doc with like 30 different whistleblowers, witnesses, and some of them are of the caliber that you're talking about.
Bringing the witnesses to do what? What is he going to do with them?
Like a documentary.
That's fine. That's a documentary. Fine. But it's
not like Congress. I get that. But it's still bringing it to the American people's attention. And it may be at a smaller volume, but at least somebody's trying to get it together. But I guess my point is.
A lot of people trying to do that.
Right,
a lot of people. It's not.
Right. My
so
point is
go ahead. I'm sorry.
These are some of the same people I think you're talking about. I'm not looking at it in magnitudes that they're the same thing. I'm saying that these are some of the same people.
Maybe. If he's going to do that doc, that's fine. It'll be cool, but it'll probably come out in the post-disclosure world. Because you see, if I'm a witness and I've got important information and I'm still working, I got a family, I need that money, I need that job. It's my career. I want to go in front of I want to go in front of a committee under oath and the protections provided to witnesses and get the job done. Right? It's a little different if you're just going to be part of a documentary. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying a documentary is not a good thing. I want to see lots of them. I'm doing what I can to help these documentaries happen. That's why I co-founded the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.org with Dan Harari. But if you're going to expose yourself to risk, it would be and you really got something now. I mean, you're a very powerful witness. I mean, and I don't want to overstate this, but I mean, because the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses couldn't get a hearing, they did a doc. God bless them. All right, but as we get down to the end, if I'm a witness, my preference, if I can get in front of a committee, that's what I want. If I can't, then yeah, I can participate in a documentary that then get the message out that way. But you're going to have, if you really got something very, very problematic, your protection will be less, right? But that's, I get it. That's okay. But let me tell you, there's plenty of docs in the works. I mean, there's going to be docs pouring out of the film industry at the higher level with the money and all the great cameras and stuff, which, we don't generally have access to, but but we've still done great work. Ron James, James Fox, all the James people. But Hollywood is going to be jumping in here with the bucks, right? And the professional directors and all kinds of stuff. And they're going to make great material. God bless them. I hope they make a fortune. And I hope they donate some of that fortune to some of the nonprofits that have been set up to deal with this issue. So, yeah, I don't know about that project, but there's so many of them, I can't keep up.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I wanted to turn to Lou's 5 minutes. I thought there were some profound things that he said. I think these are things that they're not unexpected, but I thought having him say this under oath, which is I thought was important with the hearings, is, when you had Moultrie and Bray, when you had Kirkpatrick, none of those guys raised their hands under oath. But in the last two hearings, the witnesses have raised their hands under oath. And so to me, I thought that was significant. Now, the question I have before I go into this is, you said it already, and I felt it, that really the first hearing, the main attraction was David Grush, and not to diminish Fravor or Graves, but he was coming out with stuff that, that we hadn't really heard too much about, especially the biologics and stuff like that. So to me, it felt like in this hearing that Lou was kind of took over the role of David Grush, and the other witnesses were important. You had a different, I'll have to give you this. You had a different interpretation of the question, don't ask certain witnesses certain questions. I would have thought it was Lou, but you're saying it had more to do with the Immaculate Constellation document.
Yeah, it was all about that. If they hadn't been for that, I don't think they'd have said anything about that hearing. But that one got their attention, right. And again, that just confirms it's true, right? If Immaculate Constellation, it's a cool name, but it's hard to remember it. Immaculate, and the Immaculate thing is intriguing. If that was bogus, they would love it. They would love somebody to go up in front of one of those committees with a completely bogus piece of nonsense that will then suddenly be found out to be bogus a week or two later. They would love it. It couldn't be a better thing for them, the opponents to disclosure. And so this was serious. And there's going to be more of that. Okay. Danny Sheehan has been working hard to really write extremely solid witness protection legislation. Not that there isn't some, there is, and there's also whistleblower legislation. But let's face it, it's game time, and we probably need to take it to a stronger level. And hopefully that'll be put in play. Though, frankly, I'm hoping that legislation may come later. I think disclosure needs to happen right away. I don't think we should be waiting for stronger witness legislation. We need to get this thing done. We can backfill if we necessary, but whatever. So there's going to be more people coming forward, but every single witness that comes forward makes it easier for another witness to come forward. Every whistleblower, again, there's a difference between the two. They're not all whistleblowers. That comes forward makes it easier for the next whistleblower to come forward. And so what you've got is a snowball going down a hill, heading straight for the truth embargo.
Right. Well, let me go over some of the things because it kind of fits in with what you were saying. Let me go some of the things he said, and these are things that he said that I'm not sure outside of Gallaudet that any of the others said as clearly. But he said UAPs are real. He said the U.S. is in possession of UAP technology, as is our rivals. I hope everybody heard that. He said we are now in an arms race, that this is the new arms race, because whoever gets it, whether we like it or not, they're going to weaponize it. You know, we wish they'd use it for clean energy. We wish they'd do the right thing with it. But if it's China, if it's Russia, you know, even if it's us, we're going to figure out how to make a weapon out of it, which is sad because we could do so much good with this technology. He talked about threats, and this goes back to what I was trying to say with the, you know, trying to stop this congressional hearing. And you made a good point about it being over the document. They didn't want that one to go in congressional record. They didn't want it talking in a public setting. But
they didn't want the name to go in the congressional record. They didn't want anything about it to go in the congressional record.
Right. Yeah. They wanted, and it made sense after you said it, because that's like the most modern, recent thing that's come out, and they're trying to stop it, you know, from being revealed, or at least limit how much it's revealed.
Yeah, well, the U stands for unacknowledged, and talking about it in front of Congress does not fit the U.
Yeah, absolutely. He also, this is like I said, goes with the threat narrative. He talked about the threats to witnesses and whistleblowers, and I'm going to get to some solutions he had. He said, and of course, we know these: threat to careers, threat to security clearances, and then even at the extreme end, threat of life. You know, and David Grush mentioned it. Lou's mentioned it. We know that Lou came out on the Matt Ford show with a statement, basically because the threat was so real that he felt like he had to have some kind of cover to make sure everybody knows that if anything happened to him or one of his family members, that they were in good health. They weren't doing anything that would put him in danger.
Who's this?
So
Who are you talking about?
About Lou Elizondo. He put out a statement.
Elizondo said something about threat to the family and anything happened to me. Okay, all right.
Yeah, he did that on the Matt Ford show. In fact,
he did get some death threats. I think it's reasonable to say, though, that
him and David
when he lists all those things, he's referring to the whole history of the issue, going all the way back. It's not like all of that is happening last week.
Right.
So as you go back in time, I think things are more severe. But clearly, there's still intimidation and some threats going on. So some of the threats, I think that, because, you know, these days everybody can threaten to kill anybody. I mean, it's the nature of the world we're in. And so Lou and Grush may have gotten some death threats. It doesn't mean they were coming from the Pentagon. They could come from Twitter. Who the hell knows? But I think the history has got some of that going back 77 years. I believe what you're seeing now when you see something like that is less a determined threat than it is, you know, it can't hurt. Let's see if we can slow them down. But it could happen that something terrible could happen to one of these witnesses. But under the circumstances, I think whoever does it is screwed.
Yeah. I was told it was so credible that's why he did. He's had other death threats, but for whatever reason, this one was much more credible. And so he felt like he needed to act. A question I have, which is not on my notes, but I wanted to ask you this specifically. Mm-hmm. Lou talked about biologics being found, and he talked about them before he was born. And I don't know the exact year, but I know there was a crash in Italy in the 1930s. We got Roswell in 1947. So when you're talking about biologics before Lou was even born, do you think he was talking about Roswell, or do you think he was talking maybe about something like the Italian crash? You know,
do the math. Roswell was 77 years ago.
Right.
Lou was not 77.
Yep.
And so it could be Roswell. It could be after that. So, I mean, it's nothing particularly. I mean, that's a true statement. It's not particularly profound. It's not shocking.
Yeah. Well, just basically, which one was my question? Which one do you think it was? To me, it sounds like probably the most likely one. It doesn't mean it is probably Roswell, because we know that there were bodies recovered, and he's acknowledged Roswell as actually happening.
Which brings up an interesting point I'd invite your viewers to think about. I know there's a reason, but I can't quite pin it down. I mean, I can't quite convince myself of what that reason is, but they're going out of their way to not say Roswell. In two extensive hearings, and nobody wants to say Roswell.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In fact, it's always avoided. And the best explanation I can give is that there is no single word more connected to this issue in the minds of more people than Roswell. So the moment you say Roswell, bang like that, The other reason is that Roswell is the single most investigated event, more than Rendlesham Forest, more than Varina, more than any of them. The single most, thanks to Donald Schmidt, Tom Carey, Stanton Friedman, and others. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews of people, their kids, their ex-wives, deathbed interviews, and extensive research. Roswell has been proven way beyond a reasonable doubt. So the moment you mention Roswell, it's like a trigger that goes lets a person know, okay, you're really into this. You this is real. So they stay away from it. I'd be interesting to see the first person that mentions Roswell for the first time in a hearing before Congress.
I'm surprised he wasn't asked about it since he had it in his book. And
they stay away from it. Yeah, there's some sort of sense amongst, I think, both the members of Congress and the witnesses that we don't need to talk about Roswell. Okay. It is a long time ago. It's old news in a way, and I think is a case to be made for the newer, the more recent. You can discuss. I think you can discuss is a little more powerful, but it would have been really cool if Lou had simply stated in part of his his presentation. By the way, in case you were wondering, Roswell was a crash saucer with non-human bodies that stunk up the hospital. I'm just saying, it would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, that to me, that's why it seems like the most likely one. Now, one of the things that you had mentioned, and it fits within the solutions that Lou came up with in his 5-minute speech, and I'll try to go through them quickly. And that one was Congress and the president putting together a single point panel. You've got to take it out from underneath the Department of Defense. You've got to do that. Develop a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency. It would involve the government, the scientists, the academia, and our allies. I thought that was good. Now, here's the one that I think you're going to like, and I think this is a must, an absolute must. Provide a protective environment for whistleblowers. And I thought that's the one thing I know there's law written into it, but for whatever reason, Steve, the whistleblowers don't seem to feel protected right now. And so we have to figure out a way to take it to a degree where they can come out and talk about, especially if it's illegal or criminal activity involved in it, they ought to have a right to come out and report it without fear of losing their career, their security clearance, or even, like I said, at an extreme level, their lives.
Well, a lot of what he was calling for is literally baked into the UAP Disclosure Act, the proper version, for one thing. Some of the things that he talked was appropriate, but they're really not going to get put together until after disclosure. That's fine. I mean, there's a whole lot of things and structures that are going to come together after disclosure. All right. And the reason I say that, it's not necessary to get all of that stuff in place to get disclosure. We've got pretty much enough to get there. In terms of witnesses and whistleblowers, until there is a proper reform of the military intelligence complex and the vast secret empire that we've built to save ourselves from nuclear annihilation, which may not come until after we get rid of the nukes, which may not come until after we have open contact, whatever. There's always going to be risk to whistleblowers, and that's just the game. You can write research, you can write all the laws you want, but whistleblowers are always going to be in danger because you can have a wonderful, fantastic, tight law, and then you're just in your car at the stoplight. Somebody walks up, puts 2 bullets in you, and walks away. What? You think the Whistleblower Act can stop that? Right. It's mostly about internal harassment and things like that. I get it. So we want to do that, but to really get a reform where literally people are feeling pretty comfortable, you're going to have to reform the entire military intelligence complex, which is on Danny Sheehan's agenda. I can assure you, it's kind of on my agenda, but Danny could actually be involved in it. I mean, I could see him writing legislation and so forth. But it's one of the goals that I think is embedded in the truth embargo movement, and we've got to have it. I mean, we've got to reform it. Now, can it be reformed with an existential nuclear threat still in place? I don't see it. It would be nice. There have been several efforts to try to get going there. They never had a chance. With the nuclear situation being where it is, 90 seconds to midnight, and you want to get in there and start, getting down in the engine and starting to, really do some repairs and so forth. The people that are charged with defending us against our nuclear enemies, they're not going to deal with you. They're not going to cooperate. They're not going to encourage it. They have a job, defend us against those nukes, and you're just in their way. And so it's a problem. Okay. I'm glad that it's come up. I hope we can make some progress there. But the truth is, in the modern world of social media, if you're not getting death threats, you're not working hard enough. Let me point this out. In the last hearing, and this isn't just about the UFO issue. I don't want to make it just about the UAP issue, but it's notable. Two of the people that attended were the Democrats in the subcommittee hearing. They were way over to the left, and it was Jamie Raskin and AOC. Okay, and that was nice. They were sitting in their assigned seats. It was kind of awkward. They were off to the left. They weren't here this time. They didn't come to this hearing. Now, I don't know why, and I'm not suggesting why, but I know this for a fact. I visit the offices. I go to offices and I provide information, and I do that, and I did it recently for this hearing. I submitted an affidavit with a set of affidavits for like 10 nuclear weapons shutdown witnesses. I put two hard copies in two different ways into the offices of that subcommittee, and then we sent them an electronic file. But I couldn't hand deliver them to the office of Jamie Raskin or AOC. Why? Because those offices are shut down.
Really?
You can't walk in. You have to go by appointment. And the reason you have to do that is they're both receiving lots of death threats.
Death threats. Okay.
Get it?
Yeah.
And believe me, now I don't know what the answer to that is. I know that in the age of social media, when anybody can threat anybody, and who the hell knows why, what we have to do is normalize it somewhat. In other words, it's like a death threat. What do? Right? Well, depending on where it's coming from, you go, that's nothing. But and this is a much broader problem. Human social behavior wasn't ready for social media, and as a result, we're still trying to deal with it and adjust. We have a long ways to go, and so while social media is unbelievably powerful, I use it all the time. It's going to drive us crazy for a long while, until we somehow get adjusted there. But again, anybody can threaten anybody with death at any time from 8 different directions, from all kinds of accounts. And unless we devote enormous resources to being able to track and get at that, it's going to be part of our life going forward. And it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Let me ask you another question. This is something that Lou mentioned, and it's going to be along the lines is, do you think this is possible, especially since many of these programs are, like you said, they're unacknowledged special access programs, or they're hidden so deep or so siloed. But he talked about Congress to stop funding for programs that are hidden from government oversight. And I'm going, are they necessarily getting all the money from the taxpayer, or is it that black money, or is it the money that AOC found out about that's coming back into these projects, from the contractors? They have to give a percentage back. I think it was sad. I'm not exactly an AOC fan as far as politics go, but I really did like the fact that she asked some really good questions on the first hearing, especially about, where in the world is this money going? And, why can't we get an accurate budget when we have, $1 billion missing? You can't figure out where it went to.
Billion. Look, people are trying to participate and throw out ideas, and I get that. I know they're just trying to help, so they throw out an idea. Why don't we just cut the funding of the black pro? Is that cohesive? Is that part of anything? No, it's not. Is it workable? Not now. How do you stop the funding of a program you don't even know exists?
Yeah.
However, let's be clear. the UAP Disclosure Act, which I think we're eventually going to get, pretty much exactly as was described, which includes a great deal of what is needed, not everything. But it is the ultimate piece of legislation that theoretically has the structure that everything the government has, everything eventually ends up in the public space and archive. The whole enchilada, right down to the last fingernail of the last dead alien. Okay? Good. All right. But, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time for sure, but the structure is there. So if we pass that act and get that underway, then we can be able to sit back and say, okay, things are moving in the right direction. If you're demanding that this particular piece of evidence come out on this particular month, well, you're living in a dream world, but there's going to be plenty coming forward to keep us interested and intrigued for right away and for years to come. Right? And that includes the unacknowledged special access programs. They are obviously part of the UAP Disclosure Act, and they will come out too. But it wouldn't shock me if there's a couple of unacknowledged, super special unacknowledged special access programs that only a couple people in the world exist, right? Operating in some underground base somewhere that nobody knows where it is, right? And the whole thing is like its own self-contained thing. And they take the attitude, I'll tell you, yeah, these other programs can deliver to the, archives, but we're not. We're going to stay completely independent and secret. Okay. There may be a couple like that. And when they are finally discovered, they're all going to jail.
Do you think it's anything like what the terrorists have done with some of the charities? The money goes in, it's supposed to go to charities, but they funnel it off to go and pay for some of them anyway. That's been documented where we've got a different program in the government and it's supposed to be military and it's supposed to go to this. And then they just funnel off part of that money. And that's how they're partially paying for some of this black ops stuff.
When Rumsfeld, just before 9/11, said to somebody, I think he was giving a press conference or something, and said that right now we can't account for something like, what was it, $5 trillion? I forgot. Yeah. It wasn't billion. It was $5 trillion. He may have been understating it. Let me just say that when it comes to the funding process and funding trees and the sources and this and that and everything else, they are going to need the finest supercomputers running with the finest AI software we could create to figure it out. Yeah, I assure you. So don't hold your breath for some very nice accounting of that. And then once they use those the supercomputers and that fine AI to kind of figure this whole thing out, then hopefully they'll use more AI to set up a reasonable, appropriate funding modality that services the truth and everybody else. When that will happen, I don't know. Will I live to see it? Maybe not. But we have the tech and the technology and ability to sort problems of that magnitude, but not the motivation, because, all this money is landing on somebody's pocket or hands or program, and they don't want it sorted out. But we have to do that. It's a reform at the level that's at the highest level. And as I've said many times, that ending the truth embargo and the confirming the XDT presence is going to launch the greatest age of reform in human history by opening up countless doors that couldn't be opened before. And in a new world, in a new worldview, in a new mindset, I think people are willing now to support fixing stuff, meaning, hey, let's fix this, let's fix that, let's do that. And they're going to go, yeah, let's do that. And if that is true, and we do fix a lot of things and reform a lot of things, both domestically and in cooperation with other countries, we could have a pretty cool civilization here. It wouldn't take a long time, but we could have a pretty cool civilization. We've never been that far from getting things right. We do have the intelligence, the skills, the technology, and everything else to get it right. But we are locked into and boxed into certain political, psychological, and behavioral places that at this point we can't seem to get out of. Like a person so racked with depression and self-doubt and everything that they kind of know what they need to do to get their life together. They just can't. They can't do it. Right. It's always a very sad thing, particularly when it happens to social systems.
That's why I don't counsel. That's why I give it up. Exactly. You just get tired of give people the right advice and they just keep doing what they're doing. They stay in that cycle. I did have at least I have a few more, but anyway, one of the questions I had, and it kind of came up recently, it's always been the question of why they won't release the JFK files, or at least some of them, that they've quarantined some of them and they said they're still classified. And it makes absolutely no sense at all. Well, I heard Ross talking about something that I'd never heard anybody say before, and it's probably been said, I just haven't heard it. But what if there's UAP stuff in there? And that's the reason, because otherwise, why would they? I mean, most people are dead. And so what's in there other than the fact that the CIA maybe was involved in the assassination? But let's just separate that for a minute and just say, well, what if there was some UAP stuff in there that would confirm, you know, the existence of UAPs or UFOs or whatever, and that's the reason they're hiding it? What do you think? Is that a possibility?
Look, if you're into UAP, UFO stuff big time, if you've got, you know, ET memorabilia all over the place in your room, you know, I can see, you know, everything is about this subject. One of the reasons we will get the truth on the ET issue is extraordinarily important, extraordinarily needed, and could lead to very positive outcomes. Dumping the truth out about the assassination of Kennedy is all bad. There's really no positive outcomes at all. It's about the death of one politician. There were probably 50 groups that wanted him dead. God knows which one did it. Could have been a team effort. It's ugly, and there'll be recriminations, but not much you can do. The odd person who might still be living could go to jail. There's just almost no upside to it. The only good aspect of it is that it is a truth-telling measure that would help build confidence, but it's not the lead truth-telling. There are plenty of other options there that are more powerful. All right, and as far as the UFO session, look, I think it's well known that Kennedy was a very advanced thinking progressive. I think he very much brought it up to Khrushchev that that issue could be the issue that might allow us to work together. He might have been given some information about it. This is not much. It's not like if we learned that he was talking to Khrushchev about UFOs, oh, that's it, right? The truth embargo is over. No. And is that the reason they're keeping it? No. Hell, half the world knows there's ETs here. So learning that they were talking about it back in JFK, what difference does it make? It doesn't. No, it's just a very ugly, depressing thing that's just sitting there. That a lot of people, because of their emotional connection to JFK and the impact it had on them, really want the truth to be known. But really, at the core, it's about just truth in general. So I want those documents to come out. Absolutely. There are a number of things that I would like to see completely run to ground by our own government and made clear so that we know exactly what happened, assuming they know. Are we going to get those before disclosure? No. Disclosure, when I say it's a master key that opens 1,000 doors, it is. And behind one of those doors is the truth about JFK. Behind another one of those doors is the truth about 9/11. What truth is, I don't know. And there are a lot of other truths locked up that may be able to gotten to after disclosure. And that's good because and if we need those things to come out, we're never going to get disclosure. But if we get disclosure, and I've said this before, and I don't think it's unrealistic. If I'm the United States government and the ET presence has finally been acknowledged, and millions of people around the world are on fire and excited, and the press is going nuts, and they're coming in, and the world is looking at, the spotlight is on you, every person, every agency. And everything that we've gone through in the 20th century and now a quarter of the 21st century, I would think, okay, now it's time to get into the truth business. The truth and nothing but the truth. Lying, learning how to lie better, lying for short game, all that crap. It just leads to nowhere, right? And so let's get in the truth business. You ask a question, we'll tell you the truth, right? And if they did go that way, and I'm just speaking about the U.S., but every government is going to experience this. Some governments are going to struggle with this more than us. Every time they do it, the people are going to go, right on. And they'll do it again, and people go, thank you. And then they'll start sending them postcards and flowers. And they'll be going, oh, this is so much easier to work with, so much easier to lead this way. People loving me for being truth teller instead of lying, hating me because I'm a pathological liar. And so, okay, fine. But how does that come about? Well, here's how it comes about. First, you reveal the ET presence. And then very shortly, you convene just a quick analysis study or group. You put it together. And the next thing you know, they're coming out with the entire JFK files. You're going through it. You're sorting out and giving the absolute brutal truth of what happened. And then you do it with 911, and you do it here, and you do it there. And the people are just on fire. They're going, oh, thank you. On the other hand, if disclosure happens, and you're some DOD guy, or you're somebody working over the CIA, and the reporters come around and they want to know something that you were involved in terms of the ET issue, and you're going, oh, I don't want to say anything. I feel so awkward. And you just lie through your teeth into the giant global neurosphere of social media, which can spot check, fact check something in about 3 seconds, 18 ways to Sunday, and you just lie through your teeth. Big mistake. Don't do it. So we may have the greatest age of reform led by the greatest truth-telling period in our history, where truth is raining from the sky every day. I'm not somebody that just kind of like does that. I mean, I'm not one of these people that just has these incredible fantasies about things. Believe me, I'm actually pretty cynical. This is a logical extension of the power of this issue and where we need to go, and the real need on a lot of people, and the real willingness of a lot of people to go there. One of the things I am learning as I get a chance to interact with more members of Congress is this, and I think it's a pretty simple statement. I'll bet you agree, Dale. If you could sit down with every one of these and have a very intimate conversation, a couple of shots, maybe a little beer, whatever, and just get to know them, you would find out that the vast majority of the people serving in Congress hate this situation now. They hate the fact they have to raise 5, 10, 15, 20, even $30 million to win a House seat, meaning they spend half their time begging for money. They hate the fact that there's all these this endless battle that goes on, never ending, okay, where you can't get anything done and everybody's pissed and you're getting threats and all of that. They despise it, but they're kind of locked into it because of the systemic dysfunction that we've allowed to develop in this country. And so they're not as bad as you think. We just need to create a situation where that can change and they can kind of settle down and just be reasonable and cooperative. But if you've got to raise millions of dollars just to win your seat, you got to promise your soul to a lot of different people.
Right.
And then once you're in office, you're so limited in what you can do because the funding disappears. And so the system is turning everybody into assholes. It's a giant asshole machine, right? And these people are the victims of it. And the things that can fix the system are known. We know pretty much exactly what we need to do to fix this system so these people can be who they are, do good business, be good politicians, and enjoy their work. We just won't do it because, and this is the way disease works, the dysfunction itself blocks the ability to fix the dysfunction. It's a locked-in situation, and that happens in diseases. And the classic example of that is an immune compromising disease like AIDS. It's possible to get a disease that is hurting you, and the very way that it functions prevents you from treating the disease, and therefore you're locked in, and therefore you're going to die. And that's the problem the body politic has in this country. We have to fix that. Now, you may say, well, and is a good example of that. AIDS is a disease that does exactly that. But through an enormous amount of research, we came up with a way to get through that dilemma and actually be able to provide at least palliative treatments that allowed people to live. All right. But for a long time, we couldn't do it. We finally solved the dilemma of AIDS as a disease that not only kills you, but prevents you from treating it. Well, that's what we need with the body politic and the American political system. We need to find a way to get through that dilemma and fix it. And as soon as we start fixing it, it will be easier to fix it. And it'll be possibly start off very slow, but the reform could come very quickly. That is how I view these things right now. And that's what helps me sleep at night.
Okay. Well, my thing about it is I listen to you, and I've had you on several times, is I know that your hope is disclosure, that if we can get to disclosure, that has the potential to change a lot of things. Now, what about contact? Do you think if disclosure will have that big of an influence, what will contact do for us?
It will amplify it. I think the ET agenda has always been they need to disclose, right? Globally, the whole 9 yards. And they've done a lot that helps that along. I mean, believe me, it's not like they're, it's not like the ETs are intervening in this a lot and preventing us from moving forward. Nah, they help out in a lot of ways. Do they do a lot as much as we want? But they do what they want to do. And so I think that disclosure has been the end game. I believe that disclosure is necessary for the ETs under their rules of engagement to get into full open contact. Contactees being abducted is not full open contact. Having secret meetings with some government is not full open contact, which may or may not be happening. But interacting with authorities around the world, having exchanges of information and discussion, and we are being given records of it all. It's being presented to us. However, it's happening. We're finding out what's going on. That's open contact. That's a big deal. That's the second phase. I have said many times, I like 2 years. I think 2 years is about the right amount. Disclosure, 2 years, open contact. So obviously, open contact dramatically reinforces the rationale and supplies enormous new energy to the human race to fix its problems. Now, it's very possible that the ETs in open contact may offer some assistance. They may say, well, here's a few ideas that you might use. We're pretty smart. But it may be more dramatic than that. And I've said this many times. I think when we have open contact and say some discussion that we know about, regardless of what's been happening privately, the first thing we're going to learn about the open contact that just went on last Tuesday is the ETs made it clear we need to get rid of the nukes. And people are going to go, ooh, that's interesting. Why? Because I think that is, in fact, the central issue. Remember where this all started? 1945? And then the obvious question for that, and I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to keep doing it until it happens. The obvious question that follows that is, why do they give a damn whether we have nukes or not? Why do they care? Why do they care if we blow ourselves up? I mean, I can give some reasons for that, but overall, they're fine. We could blow ourselves to smithereens. They're fine. So why? And there's only one possible answer to that. Well, there's only one answer to that question that makes any sense that I can imagine. And that's this. Okay. Let's turn it around. Humans build their starships, which they're going to do pretty soon. They're closing in on it. There's all kinds of equations flying around, and there's programs, and that's just in the public sector. We're going to go to the stars because I think we can. We just have a little relativistic problem there. We don't quite understand space and time fully. Gee, that's a shock. We're going to go. And so we build some starships. Naturally, we load them up with nukes because, it's dangerous out there. I've watched the movies. And so we head on out to the Centauri system and we find a planet and it's cruising around and we're checking it out. And lo and behold, it's a very advanced planet. And they got Teslas and shit and all kinds of new stuff. And we're going, wow, they're like us. They're advanced. Great. And then we sort of notice that they are very violent. And they've got a lot of weapons. The physics is the same all throughout the universe. They got nuclear bombs. They got nuclear weapons. They've got missiles. They got all of that stuff. And they're very much at risk of using them. which is, again, their problem. But we also notice, as we circle this planet or investigate it, that they're closing in on interstellar travel, like we did. And we're looking at that planet and we're going, boy, wouldn't it be a bitch if those guys down there were to put a bunch of nuclear weapons on one of their new starships and headed our way? Okay. What do you think we would do at that point, or in the interim leading up to that point, as we know it was coming, right? And hey, 50 years, those things down there are going to have starships. You think we're just going to turn around and go home and tell everybody, you know, there's a planet out there, they've got starships maybe soon, they got nuke weapons and all kinds of crap, and we just hope they don't find us? All right? You think that's what we would do? Of course not. We would have to intervene. There is no way that we would let that planet in the Centauri system build starships, fill it up with nukes, and maybe find us. Or some other poor planet that's not as advanced as us. Maybe they're in the 16th century or something, and go down and nuke them or something. No, we would intervene. And that is exactly what they are doing. And since that is what they are doing, when we get into open contact, the first point is going to be, what are you going to do about the nukes? And then what follows then is, what are we going to do about the nukes? And somebody will raise their hand and basically say, tell them to go screw themselves. We're never going to give up our nukes. And another person will raise the hand. Well, can we cut a deal here? Can we work out an arrangement? Okay. And this debate will go on for a short amount of time. And then I don't know what the outcome will be, but let's say the outcome is the nations of the world come together for the first time in centuries and agree that we're not giving up our nukes, go screw yourself. And they're going to say, okay, that's fine. Keep the nukes. If you use them on yourselves, well, that's your problem. But understand, you're never going to fly a starship off your planet. It ain't going to happen. You can build them, and we'll just turn them into doorstops, right? Build another one, we'll melt it. Build another one, we'll blow it up. You're never leaving your planet. We're not idiots out here. And then people are going to say, well, that's just so wrong. That is wrong. We have constitutional right to have starships with nuclear weapons and go fly around. And they're going to go, what constitution are you referring to? I'm not familiar with that. What is that? And so if I'm right, that's going to be pretty interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And ultimately, I think we're going to do exactly what they want us to do. We're going to get rid of the nukes. And that makes us safer. And that makes them open to helping. And they're going to say, thank you for getting rid of the nukes. What do you need? Well, we need some new energy systems. We need antigravitics or better antigravitics. We need to deal with our nuclear waste. We got a whole lot of diseases, you know, and it's getting worse as the temperature keeps rising. The mosquitoes are now everywhere. They're up in the North Pole. People get malaria in the Antarctic, whatever. We need help. And they're going to go, no problem. We're here to help. We got the solutions to all those problems. And we'll provide you this and give you that. You know, we're not going to do it for you, but you do that, something like that. And suddenly, wow, there really is a galactic federation. And it's not as violent as the one in the movies. And we're starting to improve our life here. And they've helped us. And we're very, very appreciative of that. And maybe we'll get to go visit them. I don't know. I'm not talking science fiction here. I'm talking about a logical, common sense extension of what we know that has happened in the last 77 years. And if I didn't have ADDH and can't write word crap anymore, I'd write a whole book about that. But somebody else is going to write it. Has it been done in science fiction? Has this particular thread that I've discussed been done in a science fiction book? I don't think so. I don't think a book of sci-fi that incorporates the truth embargo and so forth in it has ever happened. Will there be one? Yeah, probably, but I'm not talking science fiction. I'm trying to give you a sense of where this is headed. And the timeline is simple. Disclosure in the next 5 months, open contact in 2 years or less, some negotiations and discussion, dismantling of all the nukes. That could take 6 months. And then some technology exchange. The world is getting along a little better. Most of the worst threats are gone. and people are actually coming off antacids, using less drugs, less suicide, things like that. That's all.
One of the things as I listen to you, and I'm not definitely disagreeing with you because I think a lot like you do.
Okay.
It's just the fact that, oh yeah, I meant to take that one off, is the fact that there are going to be some who are going to say, well, that assumes that there is a galactic federation, that whatever's out there is better than we are. And I often argue it's a phenomenon. And so there may be some parts of the phenomenon that aren't so nice, but this is where I wanted to go to. I don't think that they are malevolent, you know, and the reason why is I can't understand, unless they're playing some crazy long game, if they were malevolent and they wanted this planet, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to possibly stop it? And that takes back to the hearing, and kind of maybe the last thing I wanted to tie in here is Schellenberger talked about an F-22 getting boxed in by orbs. And if I heard the story right, it was the fighter was going in and it was trying to target a UAP, and these orbs came in and boxed it in so that it could not target it. And to me, that's significant because they could have just as easily have destroyed it.
Of course. Yeah, sure.
Instead of box it in.
Let me help there. Have you ever looked at a map? Well, it's one of these graphics, which is obviously not the size, but it tries to, it shows you how many airliners are in the sky at the same time over the United States.
Wow.
Most people have no idea how many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jet burnt journeys take place, right? Just in the commercial sector. How many JetBlue, Spirit, Delta Airlines planes have crashed into a UFO lately? You know of any?
Mm-hmm.
How many of our militaries have crashed? Now, admittedly, they probably wouldn't tell us, but if you crash into a UFO, you're going to fall down somewhere, and they got to explain what happened to that jet. So you keep hearing about this risk to airspace and whatever. I get that. I don't. It's okay. It's a legitimate on the surface concern, and it helps to motivate people to take some action. All right. But they're not crashing into our airplanes because they're rather nimble. Okay. And so again, they're around and they can be intimidating, and they sometimes do some things, I think, in a sense, just to avoid being annoyed, that seem dangerous. They turn our weapons off, and that's really irritating, but then we turn them back on. And we could go on and on. I think the question of are they worse than us has already been answered. If they were worse than us, then we would be toast, and we would have been toasted long ago. All right. We have a massive record of their presence, hundreds of thousands of contactee reports, accumulating in the files of researchers around the world, with a substantial amount of information of how they act, what they do, and so forth. We obviously have a substantial information about their flying around and underwater and space and whatever. As far as we know, they've never blown up any of our space stations. Maybe they just don't care. I don't know. We have a lot of information. And the only reason that's not given the proper due is because, according to the government's formal policy, even to this day, we have nothing, because there's no ETs. And therefore, any information you have about ETs is, of course, nothing. And so there's a lot of people that, again, for that reason, there's a lot of people speculating, are they this, are they that, or whatever, because we don't know. Well, we know a lot. Just because the government says we don't know jack doesn't mean we don't know a lot. And what's happened in the last few years is the government obviously is acknowledging every single day in another way that, yeah, you know a lot. We know a lot. And we're playing a little chess game here to see when we have to finally really start telling you. And I get it. And some people want to continue playing the game, and others are ready to concede. But again, I am not worried at all about a relatively near term, next 50 years or something, 100 years situation regarding our benefits, our needs, and welfare and extraterrestrials. I am terrified about our well-being as with respect to the conduct of other human beings.
Well, let me share one thing with you. I probably have a different perspective because I'm a pastor. Not that you would disagree with this, but it has been stated, and I have the highest respect for the person who has stated it. I can understand it's a very logical thing that they've said, is the fact that, how can they be benevolent if they didn't stop any of the nuclear accidents or, the bombs that went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they don't stop world hunger. And so if you really think about that, and as being a pastor, I'm going to.
Gotcha.
Those are the exact same arguments against God.
Look,
why does it's called theodicy?
Yeah. I've got 2 minutes. I got to go to a Twitter space. Look, I get that.
My point is that we wouldn't say God isn't benevolent, and so I don't think that's an automatic disqualification for them.
Yeah, but in that discussion, the other person come back has got a counter. It could go on and on and on and on. Look, one can look at this issue through a political prism, a religious prism, and so forth. All right, I understand that, but we know a great deal about how they conduct themselves. We know what they have been doing. And so you don't have to go to religion to at least know what they're doing. And based upon that, and without getting into religion at all, it seems to be that they are not a major threat or a serious threat to our welfare. To go beyond that is, interesting and so forth, but it's overcomplicating a situation unnecessarily, I think. But I'm not going to stop anybody from doing it. I invite people to try to be as nuts and bolts as possible. You'll have less anxiety. There'll be plenty of time down the line to take religious interpretations of what's happening.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, and we'll do that then. But if you're going to try to somehow figure this out, what's happened with respect to this phenomena through a religious prism, it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to arrive at some cogent place that makes you feel satisfied, at least to the extent that you know what's going on. Dale, great to know you, my friend. I got to go to a Twitter space, I'm sorry, X space. And if you need me again, even on short notice, just give me a buzz.
All right. I sure appreciate you, Steve. Right, thank you.
Bye.
All right. For everyone else, I'm going to go ahead and play that intro one more time because I'm sure that some of you didn't get the chance to see it. And then I will close out this podcast after that. This way you get to see it in the entirety.
Then Robert Salas, the United States Air Force retired. Back in 1967, Bob was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. He says a UFO hovered over his nuclear missile site and disabled all the missiles.
And so, Carl, here's the $1 million question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Roswell, New Mexico is a quiet city of just 26,000 people. The majority of the population are ranchers or military.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
My favorite part is when he says zero doubt. I want to thank you for watching this podcast. And let me ask you, if you haven't hit that subscribe button or the like button or share button, let me go ahead and just ask you to go ahead and like it, share it. And if you can, please subscribe. Have a good day. Thank you.